Let's do it. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first ever Purple Territory pregame show. I am your host, Joe Johnson, owner of PurplePTSD.com, VikingsTerritory.com, and the host of the Purple Journal podcast. I think it'd be easier if I just say your name and you can introduce yourself, because we have quite the cadre of talent here today. Starting off with Tyler, since he was instrumental in getting all of this set up. What's up, man?
Heyo, I'm Tyler. I do videos and stuff at Vikings Territory. I write sometimes.
What's your last name?
My name, Haig.
Okay.
Sorry.
That wasn't for the audience. I didn't know how to pronounce it, and I didn't know how to bring it up.
Yeah.
This whole show
H-A-Y-G is how you pronounce it.
It's a, we're not even recording. This was all just a ruse for me to figure out how to pronounce your damn name.
Nice.
Beyond that, yeah, I know, but this made more sense to me.
But no, I'm looking forward to the radio thing. I'm looking forward to this as like a regular occurrence, a pregame show. This is going to be a bomb. I'm excited.
Yeah, so Tyler had an amazing idea that we should kind of spurn traditional media and start our own radio station, since we have microphones and the ability to talk. So that's what we've been doing. This is kind of the first pregame show we did. We launched a show earlier this week. Gio, which is an amazing segue, if I don't say so myself. Gio, if you wanted to introduce yourself, talk about your show, when it is, and what you've been doing. Maybe he's not here.
Is he not here?
That is the standard of quality that I always strive for. It's like my dad during my birthday party. Let's go to Andy Miller, since he's the most seasoned of the remaining fellas. What's up, man? I know you're here because I can see you.
That's good. My name is Andy Miller. I'm actually a college student at the University of Kansas, but I'm originally from Eagan, Minnesota. I've written a couple of articles for Purple PTSD for the last couple of months, and I'm just excited to be here. So thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, man. Thanks for joining. Jordan, you're here.
I am.
What's up, man?
Yeah, I'm Jordan. I've been writing for Purple PTSD since early in the summer. I cast a wide net on what I write about. I try to just tackle a bunch of topics, and I'm actually from Cincinnati, and I'm actually up near Dayton now to watch the game with my dad. So just hanging out, ready to talk some football and then watch some football.
Yeah, man.
There you go.
Jack.
How we doing, guys?
We'll find out in about 37 minutes.
Yeah, that is for sure. My name's Jack Day. I'm from Hastings, Minnesota, a small town south of the cities by a half hour. I just graduated with a journalism degree from the University of Minnesota Duluth, and I'm looking forward to doing this with you guys too. This is my first time ever doing the podcast / radio type stuff, so I'm excited and looking forward to getting started.
Definitely. And so I think we should hop into. I heard something on K-Fan before we kind of break down the game that I thought was an interesting take. I think it was a rerun, and I think it might have been Common Man, who I don't listen to that often for a million different reasons. But he mentioned that, and I don't mean this in terms of statistically or numbers, so I know that one loss isn't going to make or break the entire season, but he had mentioned that just in regards to the how difficult the early schedule is going to be, and especially it's something I worried about too, fan expectation, and people I feel kind of like people are primed to kind of go a little crazy if things don't start out right and start talking about bringing Sloter in to start. But he mentioned that it was a make or break or a must-win game, and he said that with little irony or no irony. And so, Tyler, to start out, if you wanted to first kill that bird, and second, kind of break down what your thoughts were on the idea that they, it's a must-win situation for them, obviously going to Green Bay next week.
Yeah, I wouldn't say like must-win situation, but I think the idea that they need to start out well is important. I think that's very true. I think there are a lot of, like you said, expectations on this team, and if they don't start out well, their schedule doesn't. The first 5 games of their schedule are pretty brutal, and if they do not play well in the first 5 games, they could very easily be looking at like a 1-4, 2-3 record after that, which isn't ideal for the level of expectations that we're looking at. But again, I don't know, man. It's hard to say the first game of the season is like a must-win game. That kind of is ridiculous, but yeah. I will say that there is something to they do need to start out well this season for things to go where they need them to go this year.
And I'll kick it over to Jordan next, and maybe so you guys don't feel like if you're answering later you're kind of just rehashing the same topics. If you also want to cover maybe your expectations, like I've made a lot of comparisons to 2009. And when Favre came in, granted he didn't play in the preseason, but, they had a cushy schedule. I think they played the Browns first, so they I think Favre started out with like sub 200 yards.
He did, yeah.
One touchdown passing deal. It was like a Percy Harvin behind the line of scrimmage type deal. And then AP had that like one of his best runs ever. Do you foresee them starting slow, but maybe being able to eke out a win? And if so, again, what your thoughts are on this must-win, just this game or just, starting out the season?
So I took a lot of flack whenever I published a piece saying that the Vikings might only win like 5 games this season because we have a tough schedule. So I don't want to say that this game is a must-win. It would be a nice win. But, the Vikings do have to play a first-place schedule this season, and I could legitimately see us starting 2-5. Which is not what you want. To tackle the point about how, like, some fans might want to see, like, Simeon come in or Sloter come in, I don't think that's going to happen. I think Minnesota's, like, fully behind Cousins, and as long as we're not losing because of Cousins, I think he's fine. So, my expectations for this season, I think we are going to win a lot of tough games. And this first month of the season, it's super important because I think home field advantage in the playoffs and like the number 1 seed is going to be so crucial this season. The difference between getting to play in Minnesota or maybe having to go back to Philly or even having to go to like LA or something. I think it could definitely determine who gets to the Super Bowl just by where you have to go play. So I think these early games are just like super important because, we want to be playing in Minnesota come January, and then we want to play in Atlanta in February. So, we have to tackle these games. I know they're tough. I know we have to open with a tough schedule, but good teams beat good teams. That's how simple it is.
Yeah,
that's right on. You're totally right about that.
And I think
you got to beat the good teams if you want to win a Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're not going to win the Super Bowl if we can't beat San Fran or if we can't beat Green Bay. I mean, Green Bay is going to be, I think, the toughest game of the season. But I'm glad that we play them next week because we're going to get to go to Lambeau in the summer in the heat instead of having to go to Lambeau whenever it's like -17 and covered in snow.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to actually play to our advantage that we played them so early. But yeah, this is a brutal first month or two that we're going to have to tackle.
Yeah, Jack, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree completely with what everybody said. I wouldn't fully say it's a must win today, but if we can pull out a win, it will be a very nice win to have. Without, like how you guys said, how brutal our schedule is. Kind of bounce off what you guys said. Like I could see us starting 2-2, just like we started last year too, or something like that, and starting kind of slow. And I think, obviously, like the home field advantage is important, but I think that there's only really room to grow with Cousins in this offense. So if he starts a little slow, I can see that. I can see that happening. Mm-hmm. But I just think Cousins, as the year goes on, I think he's going to gel, and all these guys are going to click. And I think we might start out 2-3, 2-4, but I think that switch can be flipped later on in the year, and we're gonna get better as the year goes on.
Really good point, man. Because starting out slow or with a 500 record isn't the end of the world. Just because it does feel like maybe DeFilippo's offense is something that they're still learning. It's super complex. It's a new quarterback. Timing issues aren't there. On Purple Journal we talked about that a lot, and I was wondering, whether or not the offense was struggling or they were just kind of showing limited stuff. And I think Luke Braun, who's going to be on the show starting week 3, this show, mentioned that they're saving a lot for the season. They weren't game planning for anybody like Seattle game planned for us with those 300 blitzes in a row to start the game. And I worried though that when are we gonna? They see if this is the base offense, something feels off about it, whether it's timing or the offensive line. And if they're struggling with this, implementing more complicated concepts during the season, especially with the schedule that they have, seems like a bad move. I don't know if you wanted to touch on that at all, Andy, or just what we talked about before.
Well, yeah, first of all, if we remember last year during the preseason, the first team offense was god-awful. And then the first game against the Saints, they came out and it was explosive, to quote Mike Zimmer. As far as this game goes, I don't want to say it's a must-win, but the NFC is absolutely loaded this year, and I think the NFC North is arguably the best division in football. So, we're going to be scratching and clawing for every win we can get this year. So if we can start off on the right foot, I think that's the way to go. So,
yeah, I wanted to touch on Cousins a little bit, some expectations. There's a few ways we can take this. I thought a fun way to start would maybe be who you guys think the biggest beneficiary of Cousins coming to Minnesota is going to be as a player statistically. So to start, we're going to do this snake draft style. Let's go back to...
Yeah, good call.
Let's go back to me, and only me. To Andy. And see who you think might be the biggest beneficiary of Cousins coming, and then you guys, if you want to add a new player to each thing, or you want to maybe elaborate on a player someone else mentioned, that you guys can do that too. But
yeah. So Laquan Treadwell, he's going to be the biggest beneficiary of Kirk Cousins coming to Minnesota. His ability to just go through the reads, really, just go through his progressions, and then just get Laquan the ball. I think 2 years ago during his rookie season, I think his low stats were a product of the offensive line being so terrible and Sam Bradford having to get the ball out within a half a second. And then last year, Case not really being able to go through his progressions all that well and just kind of throwing it up to Diggs and Thielen whenever he had to. So
yeah, I heard
I think
too
Treadwell's
that
going to have a big season.
To touch on that, Mr. Braun, to name drop him the way that he name drops Arif Hassan, he mentioned that Keenum was only really allowed 2 different options each play. They didn't let him really go through more than 2 reads. There'd be a deep route and a dump off. Just because they didn't really trust his decision-making ability. Obviously, you don't pay Cousins that much money to do the same thing. They're going to let him open it up.
His talent level is just miles ahead of Keenum. If you're watching the games from last year, he literally just threw the ball up to Diggs and Thielen and said, "Go get it." So, I think Kirk Cousins is going to be a massive upgrade for every offensive playmaker, and especially for Treadwell this year. So,
yeah, and
it's already so obvious that Treadwell is improving because of Cousins' ability to find, to get deeper into those progressions.
Yeah,
for sure.
What did you think, Jack?
I'm really hoping that you're right on the Treadwell thing, because I've been a Treadwell believer now for the last 2 years, and I really haven't had a reason to be, but I still am pulling for Treadwell, so I'm hoping that's the case too. But no, I think just another guy I think is Diggs. It's been seen in the preseason that they already they have that connection a little bit already, and he likes slinging the ball downfield, and I think Diggs is our best option, at going downfield and going, last year his stats for jump balls were crazy, and like you said, bounce off your point, Keenum threw the ball up a lot, and Diggs was backtracking to get these balls, and I think a guy like Cousins coming in with a stronger arm and Diggs' quickness down the field, I think that's going to help Diggs, his value go up.
Yeah, I feel like that's been lost in the last season and a half with Diggs. His deep ball ability isn't something that has been taken advantage of. It seems like Thielen has been getting more balls down the field. So I think, it could be a huge year for him, especially with that contract. Yeah, Jordan.
I think I'm going to cheat because you guys took the two that I was going to go with. I'm going to say that, Cousins is the guy who benefits the most from this. He had a bad defense in Washington. He had Washington let his two best wideouts leave.
Yeah.
He had a tight end that couldn't stay healthy, and he had an offensive line that couldn't stay healthy. So, he brought the offensive line woes to Minnesota with him, but we're used to that. But, now he has Thielen and Diggs and Rudolph and Cook and Moe. He just has weapons all around him. And plus, my favorite statistic about the Vikings is if they score 17 or if they score 20 points, they only lose 3 times whenever they do that.
Yeah.
They're very, very good. Their defense, their defense is so good at holding teams under 3 touchdowns that if Cousins can just have 3 touchdown drives in the first quarter, we should win the game. And he's shown the ability to just be able to, you've already seen that connection with Diggs. Diggs was actually I believe it was the most efficient deep threat in the NFL last year. He caught the highest % of deep passes thrown to him. So adding a guy with, I think, a better arm than Keenum in Cousins, I think that's just going to give Diggs more chances to go up and get the ball. And I think this offense has a chance to be really explosive if Zim lets it, if he doesn't just want to play kind of safe, don't turn it over, make sure, win with defense. If we go into attack mode a little bit and don't play so conservative, I think this offense and this defense could be 2 top 5 units in the league this season and just be a lethal combination.
I did a prediction article last week where I made 2 bold predictions. The first was that Cousins was going to be a top 5 MVP candidate, and the second was that the Vikings were going to only allow 14 or fewer points on average. If both of those things end up being true, that's amazing. But that would be, that would be obviously it'd be amazing to allow very few points.
Super Bowl confirmed.
But they allowed 15.8 last year, so it's not that big of a stretch for me anyway, because I'm crazy. Tyler, though, what were your thoughts on the biggest stat?
I'm thinking monster. Cousins beneficiary, Kyle Rudolph.
Damn it!
I think he's going to catch a lot of passes. Were you going to go with it?
Yeah, I thought I was.
I think he's going to catch a lot of passes this year. I think the offense, we are led to believe that DiFilippo likes the tight ends. They use tight ends a lot in Philly. So I think he will probably catch more. Yeah. Maybe, or never mind. I'm not going to say that one, so somebody else can maybe have it later on. But yeah, Rudolph. I'm going to go with Rudolph. I think he's going to. He's been productive, but I think a few more touchdown passes kind of elevates him to that kind of next tier of tight end.
And you and I got to go to Yeah, I was gonna ask about that. Tyler and I got to go to Kyle Rudolph's youth camp and talk to him, and you could tell, a lot of these guys just kind of answer with generic, like, media tested answers, but you could kind of feel that he expounded on, like, what we were saying. He seemed really excited. He also, like, added stuff that we didn't ask about. I said 2 tight ends. He said, well, or even 3. It was you could tell that he's super excited. And I'll just,
that was early on, and you could tell he was very excited about the way things had been going.
Big time. And I'll put Dalvin Cook out there too. Once he's off a pitch count and healthy, I think he's going to be a PPR nightmare for people playing against him in fantasy football. Especially with, I know they tried a lot of, like, naked bootlegs and stuff in the preseason, and it seemed like Cousins was getting, like, just jacked on every play. So maybe
it was like he was facing. It was like a one-on-one with a D end every time it happened.
Yeah,
it was horrible.
And it was not good. So maybe they'll scheme around any offensive line woes and have a lot of dump off plays to Dalvin, which would be good.
That's very possible.
Do you guys think that the defense is going to benefit from Cousins? Like, I mean, again, not to be the Cheeto of this group, but, like, I almost went with the defense, and I was hoping somebody else would, because, like, if Cousins comes in and makes this offense explosive, the defense doesn't have to hold teams to 15 points a game. The defense, if they have a bad day, it's not going to kill us. Like in Philly, the defense had a bad game. The offense wasn't good enough to, put up big numbers, and, it just kind of fell apart. So, like, I think with Cousins, we might be able to win a couple shootouts if the defense, gets banged up or if they have a bad day. So I wonder can benefit
how much they'll balance that too, to build on that, like going for points quickly down the field or running the clock out a little bit, just especially with the preseason that Murray had, setting us up for second and shorts and stuff like that.
I think Zim will want to play conservative just because that's his nature. I think he is timid to, start calling shots and, have a guy who, score an 80-yard touchdown and then put the defense right back out there right after they just,
That's what I was just
going
to say was I think he sees it as it hurts his defense to have the offense score quickly. So I think he would rather have the offense build long drives. Even if they don't score, his defense is good enough, but just give the defense time to rest, time to be off of the field. Because if you have an offense that scores in 30 seconds and the defense is out there again, it's going to, by the end of the game, that's going to get difficult for those guys.
Yeah, the longer the offense can stay on the field, the most, the defense is going to continue to benefit from that. So as long as the offense is out there as much as possible, that's the way to go.
But does anybody think that, like, this youth infusion that the Vikings did, like, we added, like, Hughes in the secondary, we added another safety, which I guess he's not young, but, we just added a lot of depth. We added defensive line depth, and, like, I love Brian Oberson and I love Terrence Newman, but they were old, and, like, maybe didn't have the same stamina as they did earlier in their life. So, like, do you think that'll help? I mean, I know Stem, he says it every season that, we're going to rotate the defensive line, and it never happens. But do you think this might be the season where, like, even if the offense throws a 90-yard touchdown pass, the defense goes right back out there, and maybe Griffin sits down for a couple plays, and we put, like, his backup in there. I can't think of what his backup's name is off the top of my head right now.
Yeah, but, that makes sense, though. I hear what you're saying. I think it seems like they're working towards it, obviously, but I guess the question, we can't really, until we see it, until we see how they can, stand up until the end of the season. I mean, it's jury's still out, I guess.
Just a lot of excitement about this team, I guess.
Yeah, and it's good to know that they have that depth in case they need it. They're not going to have a bunch of spent guys out there because of that.
Well, it's a copycat league, isn't it? And that's how the Eagles pretty much beat us in the NFC Championship game. So
yeah. Did you see the minutes that the Eagles defensive line played on Thursday night? It was like all of them were like playing ridiculously low amounts of minutes, except for the defensive tackle. He played for most of the game, but like the rest of them, it was a cycle, and it was effective.
Yeah.
What do you guys
just
think?
Kind of balancing out.
Oh yeah, go for it, man.
Just kind of bounce off that, like a quick topic that we need D-line depth because we need the big boys to get their rest. And I am excited, just off this preseason alone, I'm excited to see what Jaleel Johnson can do. I'd watch every preseason game, and he looked like he was ready to make that next step where maybe he's not starting material yet, but if Linval or Sheldon Richardson get tired and he needs to come in there, he looks like he can be that guy to come in and fill that role at a solid level.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of his. He's a Big Ten guy. I am super biased towards the Big Ten. I think they kept a couple extra guys too, like 3-tech guys.
Jalen Holmes.
Yeah, the rookie from Ohio State.
Yeah, he's inactive
I'm
today.
big on him.
I was just going to say that he's inactive today. But they definitely kept him on the roster. I'm thinking for that very reason for later on in the season, rotation-wise. So.
Well, did you guys see that Everson Griffin said he thought last season if he didn't mess his foot up, he would have broke the sack record? And he's kind of calling his shot for this season. So, man, it would have been close. Yeah. So I hope he stays healthy. I'm sorry that I keep butting in, guys.
No, that's awesome. And your enthusiasm offsets my severe crippling depression. Speaking of crippling depression, the offensive line is obviously the biggest question mark. I wanted your guys' thoughts on if you're like where you're at with that. You know, that's been my big. Completely full disclosure, I was pretty pissed off after the draft. I kind of felt like maybe Zimmer, like Spielman needs to. Speaking of enthusiasm, like say, yeah, I know you love the defense, but we need to maybe invest in the offensive line a little bit more. I think the trade that they made was it maybe an admission of that, or maybe they expected Elflein to be further along than he is. Do you feel like that trade was a Band-Aid move and that they'll be fine? I think the latest I've heard is that Elflein could be back by week 2. And I'll kick it to you, Tyler, since we're doing the snake draft thing. Just general thoughts on the offensive line, fears.
I'm less worried about the offensive line today than I was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. The Isadora at center and the preseason, that was not okay with me. That freaked me out quite a bit. I just don't. I feel like you're right in that it was a Band-Aid move to bring in the Jones in the trade, but I feel like that Band-Aid is going to work because I feel like by the time Elflein gets back, that line will be able to settle. And when you're looking at a line that then consists of, the Reef, Remmers, Elflein, whoever on the inside, including Jones, that I'm not as terrified of as I was of the possible scenarios a couple 3 weeks ago. But it's definitely a concern. I mean, it's always a concern. This is the Minnesota Vikings we're talking about here. It's like if you're not talking about the offensive line or the kicker, what are we doing, But I mean, it's a concern, but I think they can it is a Band-Aid, but I think they can get through it and still win games and be productive on the offensive line. So.
It was a pretty cheap Band-Aid, too. They only gave up a 7th round pick.
Yes, exactly.
They obviously didn't expect Easton to be out for the year, too, so, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it was like a double Band-Aid move, because they got, not Easton, they got Elflein's, temporary replacement, for a week or 2, maybe 3, and then as soon as Elflein can come back, they have Easton's replacement now to kind of sit, and and then he can be on the line, and then the line can be good, and we can win many Super Bowls.
Hey, there you go.
Just that easy.
Let's end the show with that.
It's good to meet you.
Jack, if you wanted to add to that.
I will say, I don't know. The offensive line is something that kind of always worries me because I've been following the Vikings since I can remember, and it's been a while since we've had a great offensive line, and even when we did have a great offensive line, I don't know if it was partially because of Adrian Peterson making them look a lot better than what they were, but having said that, Delvin Cook looked insane in the first 4 games last year, and I am pumped up to see what he can do. And I think having a running back of that caliber and then having Latavius behind him, I think that can make our offensive line better, because we know they're not great, obviously, but I think that can help. Yeah. And if they can get if they can get a full head of steam going into starting the season, I think that's just going to help Cousins with his play action passing ability, and he's good at that too. And if those two things can click, I think the offensive line will be okay at least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, do you guys expect, and anybody can grab this one, what do you expect from O'Neal? I feel like it was a roller coaster of emotions with going to training camp. I think the initial word I heard from a few people out there was that if he wasn't a second-round pick, he wouldn't even have made the final 53. And then he, came in and played relatively well in the preseason games. He gained as much weight as I did freshman year of college, so he must have been on the hams and sadness diet. But he, I guess, looks okay. But do you foresee him contributing at all this season? Or I mean, it would be a bad thing if he had to. But are you a little more bullish on that?
I think if O'Neal plays, something's bad. Something went wrong.
Yeah.
I think he needs to sit postseason because he's good in pass protection. He's bad in run. He's bad in the run game, and it's just because of his size. He's kind of built like a big tight end. So I think we sit him postseason. We let him get fat. we bolster him up, and then we turn him into a brick wall. And and then we unleash him next season. But I think he could actually develop into something like a really good tackle for us. We just have to fatten him up. We just have to put some skin on his bones.
Yeah.
Meat on his bones.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, was he a burn victim? Well, let's all start donating some skin grafts to Brian O'Neal. And so one of the topics we had was, the last 6 quarters of the season during the playoffs, the Vikings defense regressed, terribly. I know after the second half of the Saints game, I think it was Everson Griffin basically said that they figured they had the game won and they kind of went on autopilot, which at the time I was like, oh, okay, well, they'll turn it around for the Eagles. Clearly, Peterson was, on God mode during the playoffs with his play calling. I mean, for the points that they put up against the Patriots, it's something that you kind of think, well, we just there was like a destined thing for no team was going to stop them. But do you feel like maybe I know the question was, was the defense exposed? Starting with Jordan, do you feel perhaps that the other teams can copy what the Eagles did? And I know we've touched on this a little bit, but what are your expectations for this defense?
So I actually was the one who brought up this question, or at least I tried to, because I was trying to kind of give myself a T-ball home run, because I've been asked this question so many times by my my buddies and stuff. I think the second half of the Saints game, Zimmer went conservative. The team kind of went on autopilot. We had a 17-point lead. We were playing off coverage. We weren't treating Breeze and Michael Thomas with respect. And then I think going into Philadelphia, we made the conscious decision that, you know what, we're not going to let them run the ball. And if Nick Foles beats us and throws for 500 yards and, 8 touchdowns or something, we'll hang our hat and we'll say, we didn't see that coming. That's Nick Foles. That's not Nick Foles. Like, that guy got touched by God, I think today, I saw some people have pointed out that they're not going to expect the Niners to beat them, so the Vikings are going to end up getting blown out again because their defense isn't good. And I'm like, no, the defense is going to respect Jimmy Garoppolo. If anything, it's going to be the exact opposite, because I don't know who their running back's going to be. Chris Thompson and Matt Breida, I just don't have respect for those guys against our front seven. So I think that I don't think any team's going to be able to replicate it unless we end up playing a backup QB that's been touched by God again. I actually liked what we did against Philadelphia. I liked that we were we're not going to let Jay Ajayi beat us. We're going to make Nick Foles beat us, because I would take us over the Eagles again if Nick Foles was playing, because I just don't think Nick Foles could repeat that performance. I don't think he has that in him. But so that's kind of my opinion on it, is just that, Nick Foles beat us, and we weren't expecting that at all.
Yeah, and Jack, if you wanted to kind of expand on that a little bit.
I agree with that too. I just think that our defense is like sometimes too talented for their own good. Like, we have so much talent on our defense, and like we brought in more talent, like with Aloka and Richardson now both being on the team, two guys that have a lot of talent and they have great chemistry. But bouncing off what you guys said, I think like the offense didn't put them in great situations in those last 6 quarters either. Like, we turned the ball over twice in that first drive, or the first half against Philly, and then that, I'm pretty sure it was, I don't remember what quarter it was in against the Saints, but when Keenum kind of just threw that one up and they...
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Like, yeah.
It was like the first drive of the second half.
Yeah.
And he never did that all year. That was their key to the season, was not turning the ball over.
Yeah, and you could tell when that happened.
I did it a ton in those 6 quarters.
I felt after that Saints thing, it was like, oh, God, here we go again. It just had that feeling to it.
Mm-hmm.
They blocked a punt too, the Saints. That's another turnover right there.
Yep.
And then injuries as well. We're not talking about, like, they were really beat up at the end of the year. Griffin was not the same player, and I mean, you can make a case that Rhodes was not at 100%, and Smith was not at 100%, and I mean, they were all tired. We kind of know that now too. There are a lot of things to point to. I don't think they got exposed. I think they were just tired.
No, Zimmer said that this defensive scheme has been around for like 3 decades or something like that. It is tested. It's not going away. It's not exposed. It's, ultimately, do we ask the question, do we trust Zimmer? And the answer for everybody should be yes for that one. So
we have a T-shirt that says, trust in Zim, that I think I basically stole from his website. So I guess we'll see you in court, Coach Zim. Let's talk about any press is good press. Let's talk about the actual game.
What time is it?
It's
we got like 2 minutes. When does this team start?
Well, maybe my clock is off. We have about 2 minutes.
58.
Let's run through just real quickly everyone's score prediction. Let's do that.
Okay.
I'll start. Actually, I'll go last so I can do prices right, you guys. Tyler, if you want to go.
I'm going to go Vikings 21, 49ers 10. I think it's going to be ugly. I think the offenses are going to kind of struggle, but I think Kirk Cousins is going to score enough to make it a comfortable win for
I
Vikings.
hope so. Andy?
28-17 Vikings.
Ooh.
Straight up.
Jack?
Straight up.
I'll go similar, 24-13 Vikes. Let's hope that 24 is just 1-for-1 with field goals.
Yeah.
And Jordan?
27-7 Vikings. It's going to be nasty. We're going to shut them down. We're going to score. I have a lot of trust in this team.
Should we kick it to Gio and just have some dead air to kill it?
There you go.
Tie.
Just put some crickets in there, tumbleweed going by.
Oh, my God.
I predicted 17-6 Vikings on the Purple Journal podcast. Me and Joe do Joe Oberly. We do like a game by game score thing, and then we add it up during the season. And I think I lost by like 7,000 points somehow last year. NASA's still tabulating how bad I did. But yeah, I think that it'll be a win. And so I just really quickly also for those listening, I wanted to remind them we are doing a live chat of the game after this on both sites. You should be able to. You don't even need to create an account if you don't want to. Stay tuned. We're fully rolling out our radio, quote unquote, radio station this week. I am personally doing a morning show with Joe Oberly called Morning Joe's. That'll be on Tuesday and Friday mornings. I know there's a whole bunch of other stuff in the works too. So just go to the homepages of our social media to follow that, and you'll be able to basically keep tabs on what we're doing. But other than that, come back next week. We will be doing another pregame show, and I wanted to thank those that came here live for listening, and we will kind of go from there. Watch the Vikings hopefully come out and
dominate.
Tear it up. Ooh, sound effects. I'm gonna play with the sound effects for a couple hours if people want to stay on with me. But yeah, thanks everybody for showing up and thanks for listening. This has been the Purple Territory pregame show. Skull.
Join the chat.
Join the chat.
Go.
Skål.